I want to tell you about a card game that is so good that it hasn't been improved upon in 20 years. Bohnanza. It's about trading beans. In Bohnanza, you play as bean farmers. Bohn is German for bean, and they mash that with the English word bonanza, which means a large amount of something valuable, and so you end up with a name that is weird in 2 languages. The goal is to make the most money, and you do that by planting beans in your field and harvesting them to sell for coins. The bigger your crop, the more coins you'll get. To get the beans you need, you trade them with the other players. Like in Catan, you swap cards for other cards. It's such an instinctive thing. I've got what you want, you've got what I want, let's trade. Everyone just gets it. It's like swapping football stickers at school, or baseball cards, or collectible Spice Girls photos. What's incredible is that in the 24 years since Bohnanza was released, there hasn't been a single other notable card game that does trading. Bohnanza was published in 1997, so just 2 years after Catan and 3 years before Carcassonne, in that first wave of great modern board games that came out of Germany. It was designed by Uwe Rosenberg, who has since become one of the biggest board game designers in the world, famous for his heavy strategy games like Agricola. But he started out designing simple card games whilst he was at college studying statistics. In fact, his thesis was on probability in the game Memory. He was only 27 when Bohnanza was released, and it was his first real success. So you could say he's been farming since day one, but you wouldn't say that. It was so successful that he decided to turn down a doctoral position to focus on game design, and he's been designing games ever since. Bohnanza is by far his best-selling game, having sold over 3 million copies. He was inspired by the 1980 game Civilization, a game that can take 8 hours to play. And he wanted to take his favorite part of it, the trading phase, and make it into a game of its own. But he found the free-for-all trade in that game to be too much, so he simplified it. In Bohnanza, you can only trade with the person whose turn it is. Bohnanza did something revolutionary for a card game. It fixes your hand. In every card game you've ever played, you can arrange your hand however you want. Put them in numerical order, order them by suit, it doesn't matter. The whole point of a hand of cards, usually, is that you can choose which card to play. Not in Bohnanza. You can't ever move them around. It's a production line. They come in one end and they go out the other. And at the start of your turn, you have to plant the first card in your hand. You don't have a choice. And the dilemma you face, all bean farmers go through it, is you've only got 2 fields. Each field can only hold 1 type of bean, so if you haven't got a free field, you have to harvest one of them to make space for the new card. And the only way to avoid that problem is to trade the cards you don't want for cards you do want. The fixed hand makes you want to negotiate. That's why it's brilliant. And it's not the only incentive. Beans will only score you coins if you collect enough of them. So if you've got 3 blue beans, they're currently worth nothing, and you're desperate to get 1 more so you can get a coin. And the other players know that, so they'll be driving a hard bargain. Every turn, the player flips over 2 cards that they can either keep or trade with the other players. If you want that garden bean of theirs, you'll be jumping in to offer a chili bean that you know they want, but they decide to play hardball. Chili beans aren't worth as much, so they demand a stink bean as well. But you don't have that. Unfortunately, someone else does. The back and forth bargaining with each other is the heart of the game, and it's just so much fun. When a friend won't give you what you want, even though the deal is better for them. I love how much room there is to maneuver. You can convince players to harvest now and change tack by offering them 2 beans of a different type, just so you can get the one you need. And how long do you wait before harvesting? The game tempts you into hanging on. Once you have 8 chili beans, you only need 1 more to get another coin. But waiting for a card to appear, keeping that field occupied, will mean you'll miss out on planting other beans. The most special thing about Bohnanza is there's nothing else like it. If you want a modern card game where you get to trade cards, this is your only option. If there have been attempts to do something similar, they've not succeeded. It's a testament to how good Bohnanza is that it's been plagiarized twice. Both were Kickstarter campaigns, trying to raise funds for games with suspiciously similar rules. Unfortunately, you can't copyright a board game design, so Bohnanza's publisher, Amigo Spieler, couldn't stop them. They just had to appeal to the board game community not to give them money. I do wish they'd give Bohnanza an updated look. It hasn't changed since the first version in 1997, and apparently we had very different tastes back then. Imagine how good it would be if it looked like Sushi Go. I worry that the art holds the game back from reaching new audiences who would love it. I'm like a proud mother who says, if you just take out that horrible nose ring, the girls would see what a lovely young man you are. Some of the artwork is based on German puns that don't make sense in English. The reason blue beans are holding a gun is because Blaubohnen is German slang for bullets. And the green beans are throwing up because in German they're called Brechbohnen, and it's a play on the word brechen, which means to vomit. The only real downside to Bohnanza is that it can go on a bit, but this is a problem with all negotiation games. The more you get into it, the longer it will last. My tip is, if you have the version with the wax and coffee beans, don't play with them. The original German game didn't have them, so you don't need them, and the game will go much quicker without them. In terms of who this game is for, I'd recommend it to anyone who likes the trading in Catan or Monopoly, or wants to try trading for the first time. It would work for ages 8 and up, just don't play it with anyone who might get upset if no one will trade with them. And I like it best with 4 or 5 players. If you did want to buy it, there's a link below. There are 12 expansions to Bohnanza and 6 spin-offs. Let me tell you about them all. Okay, I haven't played any of them, but the general consensus seems to be that none of them are essential and they complicate a game which is great on its own. If you would recommend one of them, let everyone know in the comments. If you already love Bohnanza and you want something more involved, I'd recommend Chinatown or Lords of Vegas as a good next step, where the negotiation is a bit more free-for-all and there's other stuff going on as well. If you'd like me to make a video on them, let me know in the comments. But if you'd rather stick to simple card games, then there are a few others that have also really stood the test of time. Check out my recent top 5 pub games video, especially High Society and No Thanks. As for other games by Uwe Rosenberg, it's quite a leap to his heavy games like Agricola and Feast for Odin, and they're a very different style, so I wouldn't go straight there. But for something more on Bohnanza's level, I would recommend his Tetris games, Patchwork and Spring Meadow. I've linked to my videos for them. To see the next video in this series, please subscribe to this channel, and I'd like to thank all of my patrons without whom this video wouldn't exist. To become a patron, go to patreon.com/actuallol, where you get my monthly newsletter. I'm John Perkis, see you next time.